time for another round of Brandy. Candid conversations over cocktails about all things brand with your hosts, Reilly Newman and Scott Saunders, the brand developers behind Motif Brands.
Welcome back to another round of Brandy. Thanks for stopping by and sipping on this episode. Today, Scott and I are discussing the difference of what a business sells and what a brand sells. Yes, there's a difference, and it may surprise you.
Yeah, and there's, again, it's like reinforcing the idea that yes, all businesses have brands, but are they functioning and are they making their decisions more like a business or more like a brand? And when we say brand, we're talking about great brands. Brands that are magnetic, they are embraced, they're resilient brands. Yeah, that's a good word, resilient brands. So, and there's a difference there.
And it's like they're almost enchanting in a way. And that's like, if you look at a business will exist if there has to be demand, because that's what makes the market. And so in basic economics, when you think of business, people just go, oh, it's supply and demand. Supply and demand this, supply and demand that. And that's true for a market. But what I like to kind of differentiate is that with a brand is about desirability. You have demand and then there's desire. Yeah. And there's something just about desire and the difference of demand is that desire can help kind of be that magnetic pull of that demand. So if multiple brands are in a market, they're serving the market, they're providing the supply for the demand as a business. But one of those, if the brand is on point, if it is a resilient brand that's enchanting and just has that draw to it, it is magnetic and it actually creates that desire where then the preference, of the buyers start going towards them.
Yeah. And I think if you think about like demand is more of, it's a need. Okay. Yeah. And then it's being fulfilled by something.
Right. Where it's very transactional and very functional. And like, that's how the market works. Like, it's like you have supply and then you have demand and it's being fulfilled. It's very black and white and rational, and brand comes into it and it comes from a totally different angle where you do have emotions, you have relationships, you have perception, you have a lot of these different moving factors that aren't rational. They aren't black and white and they aren't, functional for that matter. They're very subjective and very abstract.
You look at Nike. Nike is a huge brand, been around for decades, dominating but Nike doesn't sell shoes. Nike doesn't sell warm-up outfits. Nike doesn't sell, athletic shorts. Nike doesn't sell, yes, it does as a business. The business of Nike does, but the Nike brand doesn't sell that. No. I've never seen one single Nike ad, billboard, campaign, whatever it is, any of their marketing, I've never seen a product shot of selling this particular shoe or this type of thing. Now come down to Nike to get it. What Nike sells is they sell motivation.
Right.
They're not selling shoes. They're selling motivation. Just do it.
Yeah.
It's that type of mentality so that anybody that is looking for athletic performance, they're aligning emotionally and their need is for that. See, and that's the thing is their need, the audience's need, the Nike, consumer, they need motivate. That's what their need is. Yes, for shoes and whatever else they need, but they could fill that with any other brand. Yeah. But their core need is an emotional need, and in this case, it's motivation. And Nike, that's what the brand aligns itself with, right?
Yeah, and I forgot who said it, but it reminds me of they were talking about how demand determines the category. And then brand and desire, that determines the who. So a demand's going to drive a consumer to a certain category. Like you said, shoes. Okay, my shoe, whatever, I got a hole in it.
You need new shoes. You got a wedding coming up this weekend. You look in your shoes, are like, oh man, these are trash. I got to go get new shoes.
And that then, so not only that's going to drive me towards a certain sector, it's driving me towards the shoe department on a very functional level. And then from there, the actual situations that I'm in is determining the type of shoe, right? And so then from there, it's like now I'm looking at brand. Who or which brand am I going to choose and go with? Yeah. And that then goes into like what you're saying with Nike, where it's like if someone is looking at 5 different athletic shoes, you have certain shoes that apply to ultra marathon runners. You have other shoes that apply more to weightlifters. You have other shoes that apply more to like runners and and other guys who are doing more, what do they call them, trainers and stuff like that, where it's like you have certain shoes that fit different categories, or even like basketball, and the brands help really define that, so someone is pulled towards that, the desirability is there.
Yeah.
And you look at even like the success with Michael Jordan and Nike, and how much that blew up because Michael Jordan was this icon. He represented something, and so if you put his name on a shoe and he's pushing the shoe, it's like, oh, I could become like him. It's a feeling of, it's not going to make me like him, but it's a feeling that I feel like him. I feel like I could play as good as Michael Jordan. It has nothing about the shoe itself, right? It's like it's encapsulating this feeling that then the brand is starting to pedal and push that further. And I think that's where it's like, when you do look at the demand in a market that the business serves versus the actual the feeling that the brand is starting to really push towards them to create that desirability, you're starting to understand your consumer, because you understand what that feeling is that they're either desiring on the inside. They want to feel athletic. They want to feel motivated. They want to feel that they are top of their game and on it, Yeah. And I feel like that's what, Nike's tapped into, or we've talked about Apple in the past, or any of these, where it's like you're tapping into this internal narrative of the buyer.
It's like Disneyland. Disneyland doesn't sell amusement rides. It doesn't sell roller coasters. That is not what it sells. Disneyland sells memories. And that's why Disneyland, the brand, has always attributed that, because memories are nostalgic. And so you could say Disney peddles nostalgia to the market space, because they tap into that, and they know that a lot of adults, many whom had once stepped foot into a Disneyland when they were a kid, and then to return with their children. Yeah. There's a huge nostalgic connection. Oh my God, grandparents, because now you're talking 2 generations of going on the same rides, or everything, all the flood of memories that go back for a lot of people. And that experience that Disney sells, that goes beyond what Disneyland is actually selling.
Yeah.
Right? You get a ticket price and you get on all the rides, and yes, there's the cost of each ride, there's the tech, there's the investment, there's all the costs of operating costs of a day in the park, right, that they've got to recoup. Right. And so there's your ticket price, right? And they're making profit off that, right? Okay, but that's not what they're selling. And that's not what drives people to season ticket holders or diehards. I mean, it's a huge movement, but because they're selling nostalgia. They're selling memories.
Yeah. And you think of even Walt Disney, is that he would look at someone's day in the park of these kind of little magical moments, and he'd go, how do I maximize that? So everything is magical, because like you said, it's like creating those memories is going to then, down the road create nostalgia, but those memories are paramount to creating that experience. And so that's why like Disneyland today it's the second largest buyer of explosives in the world, because of how much fireworks they let off.
I love that stat.
And the only one who buys more than them is our military. And which is crazy to think about, but that's because they are doing so many fireworks shows every single day.
Now it's all drones too.
Yeah, and they're incorporating it in other ways,
with
pyrotechnics,
drone technology to do these aerial displays. It's just and even endless. And again, even like an investment of that. Okay, and I'm going to assume that kind of investment wasn't a cost cutting decision.
Yeah.
Right. It was a technology decision. It was wow, we could do even more than Fantasmic or fireworks shows, right, with drones. But you didn't see it that I know of a justifiable because we're now doing drones, we have to increase our ticket price by $2 to overcome that cost. They don't do that. They just do it because they know that even how much more spectacular it is, that's added value, and that it means a return customer.
Yeah, and it's like keeping that in mind of, again, the difference between the demand and what the actual desire is. And this is where, going back to like small businesses, where they start relying so much on like descriptors almost of like quality or or authentic, or these things that are like, okay, you're describing your business and you're
quality service.
Yeah, and it's like you're talking about yourself. Like no one, it's a whole like adage of like no one likes being sold to, but everyone loves to buy. Everyone loves to come to a buying decision on their own. And when these businesses do that, they're just talking about themselves. Oh, we're quality, we're authentic, or we're family owned and operated. And it's like you just keep talking about yourself. It's not about the buyer. It's not about the consumer.
Yeah.
But brand, on the other hand, is all about the consumer.
Yeah, family, and even things like, and I'll be honest, family owned and operated doesn't mean squat to a customer that has never eaten there or never done anything, because you could be a very dysfunctional family. So just because you're family owned, really, I think that's something that you boast about, because it's like, oh, it's a family business. Yeah, oh, my siblings and I run this, whatever it is, and think that that's the touting from the mountaintop positioning statement that's going to make people just line up out the door, and it means nothing. No. It really doesn't.
Yeah. And it's funny because it's like the business side of it, when you are so focused on that, it's like you're only talking about yourself and you're not actually getting in the hearts and the mind of your buyer and understanding, hey, this is, like we said earlier, that internal narrative that they have. How do we give them those feelings that feed that internal narrative, that they're wanting to feel a certain way? Yeah. They're coming into our restaurant, or heck, like Disney, when they're visiting the park or they're experiencing this, they're wanting something, right? Yeah. There's that desire.
Let's look at like something like a brand like, it's been around even, that a long time, right? McDonald's, right? Yeah. They don't just sell hamburgers. They sell happiness.
Right.
And even their whole tagline of "I'm loving it." It's like that idea of I'm just in a happy state when I go to McDonald's. And you think about it, it started off with the Happy Meal, right? It had the I think they were probably clowns, Happy Meal, the kids play area, right? Yeah. And it just became this amusement particularly for children. But it was happiness because you could go through the drive-thru, get some dinner, and you're out. It was kind of introducing. They were kind of on the pinnacle of the fast food movement and the drive-thru movement, and a lot of those things back in the 50s and early 60s and stuff with McDonald's blowing up. But they don't sell hamburgers; they sell happiness.
No. Well, and to that point, they just announced like this week that they're bringing back. Remember, they're in the 90s, I think, the collectible, the Disney cups and all that, where they're like themed. They're plastic.
the glass.
Yeah. So they're bringing back a whole slew of those, and I forgot which IP was on each one, but I was like, oh my gosh! Like, so now they're trying to tap into nostalgia of like the generation that experienced that before, but also bringing that back around for the next generation.
Every movie IP, I remember in the late 70s, everything from. If it came out a movie and it was a popular hit, you would see a release, and they were limited time only.
But going back, it's like, what does that have to do with burgers, right? Yeah. It's nothing to do with burgers, and that was, it's more expensive to produce those. It's more, but it draws that desirability of someone going, oh yeah, I might go pick that up, or even just like the toy in the Happy Meal. That's desirability. That's added value.
Gucci, the business, it doesn't sell handbags, right? And Ferrari doesn't sell cars. They both sell status. Yeah. It's like that, yes, they do. Literally, if there's people listening going, what are you talking about? Yes, of course they do.
Right.
But that's what the business sells, but that's not what the brand sells. The brand sells status.
And what I find fascinating about status is that status can be granted to someone, right? But it's not handed to you. It's not tangible, but it's a feeling. Someone feels they have something because they feel like they're being perceived a certain way. And you can see it. Heck, I see this even when someone buys a Starbucks, like the way they hold it and the way they drink out of it. And it is like a $7 drink, right? So it is technically like a luxury for a beverage. But even, you just see the way their posture changes when they are interacting with a, quote unquote luxury or premium brand.
It's not coming down to, the actual item itself, is people you attach that brand to their lifestyle for the status,
right? And it's like once the brand has so much clarity to it of going, hey, we're trying to help someone feel this way about themselves or feed that internal narrative, then whatever you're selling or however you're selling it, that just becomes a vehicle for getting that across. And then the customer can apply that in different ways. Like, oh, I'm going to buy a Mac computer to work on audio stuff or work on film or work on digital or just to write emails and do business, but I want to look a certain way, right?
Yeah.
But all those are different really reasonings to the same vehicle that's delivering what the brand's promising.
Right. And I think to even see like even a little fun exercise with yourself, if you want to test this feasibility, like with brands, is come up with an attribute. And then what are some brands that immediately come to mind? Like, for instance, rebelliousness. Okay. Yeah. Riley, what's a brand? When I say the word rebel or rebelliousness, right? Rebelling. What's a brand that you feel like that's what they're selling? They're selling Rebel.
Liquid Death.
Liquid Death. A water, they sell canned water. But their brand...
But I can look a certain way.
The business is selling water, but the brand is selling Rebel.
Yeah.
Just...
No, that's a good point. When you do the descriptors of what a business is pushing, it's like that helps, again, going back to the category, it's like that helps categorize. It helps the consumer really go, okay, this identify with this, or these certain words, we identify with the categories, and then the brand, that taps into the emotions and the feelings, that helps connect. So on one side, you're categorizing, you're helping them identify and make sense of it, and on the other side, you're helping them connect with the actual brand and going, oh, I will choose, brand X for this.
Yeah. I mean, and I think the use of like those types of empowering identifiers is great. Even the development process for brand. I mean, I know for us when we rebrand businesses, one of the things we do is like, yes, we present the visual creative, but alongside that, we also lay down some identifiers that we feel are good attachments for that particular execution of a brand versus another option or another path, right? Mm-hmm. And so the power of identifiers, when in developing your brand as well, because that leads to strategy. If you know that, hey, this is what we want to embody as a business, right? Then have your brand convey that as much as possible and as in its touch points, and its messaging and how it looks. And it's hard to have example, if Liquid Death didn't look like the way the brand looks,
right?
If Liquid Death looked more like Avion, right? Or Perrier, right?
It wouldn't work.
Its brand visual touch points do not say Rebel, even though they're trying to be Rebel.
That's a good point, because it is like the fact that everything has to be cohesive. All the touch points, the can, the verbiage, the certain, just tone of imagery, all that has to fit the theme that they're trying to capture by identifying as this.
Yeah, I think there's that. That's just you have to identify as part of your strategy as a brand is what you're trying to identify.
Yeah. And it goes back to that Steve Jobs quote where he said, if it's too familiar, make it unique. If it's too unique, make it familiar. And you look at any good concoction of a brand, whether that's a brand of content like Stranger Things or like a brand like Liquid Death, you're looking at something and going, okay, how do we make this familiar where the consumer is able to recognize, identify, and categorize it? Then you give it a little bit of, 10 to 20% of this twist that makes it unique. And, you look at Liquid Death in one instance where they, took a can, they identified it with a certain category and a vibe that's really related to like death metal and really just kind of like extreme sports and kind of just that vibe and rock music and everything. And then the uniqueness of it is that twist of, oh, but it's a water, right? So they almost went like reverse. It's not, hey, this looks like a water bottle.
It looks like an energy drink, but it's not.
Yeah,
it's
but
water.
Here's the trick. It's water. Ta-da. And that's the ta-da. And then with like Stranger Things was nostalgia through the roof. They're, pulling back on all these things that everyone just connects with and riding bikes in the neighborhood in the evening and just all these very
video game arcades and all those
things.
Like
it was so rich in the way they did it and so brilliant. And then the 10 to 20% little twist was the sci-fi. If it was too much sci-fi, people would have been disinterested or it's like, that's not for me. But the way they balanced that was so brilliant. And really, if you look at brands that are like that, it's like again, going back to Apple is so sleek and innovative and really just like high end in that way. And then the 10 to 20% is the casual language and the very familiar, friendly vibe
usability
about it. Yeah. And it's like, I think it's
next to zero learning curve.
Yeah. And it's like, it's intuitive and it's there and it's friendly and it's human. And, so when you are looking at your business, it's like, okay, what are we categorized as? Now, how do we lean into that and really create that desire by having that uniqueness, that distinction? And again, like we talked about on a previous episode, is like, it's not about just being different, because to be different, you're comparing yourself to your competition and then deviating from there, versus being distinct is being distinct in who you are.
Yeah.
Just by default, without any comparison.
Being different means you're being reactionary.
Yeah.
Because if you're always looking at what everyone else is doing and then just changing you to be opposite of them,
Yeah.
that's not the same as you figuring out how to be distinct in and of yourself and being true to that and not constantly be looking over your shoulder and changing course.
Yeah.
Because then all you're doing is looking at what the competition is doing. They make a move and then you react and modify what you are based off of what they're doing rather than you dictating what you're going to do. And let the rest of the company, if it's, I mean, yes, you have to analyze to go, how can I do things differently, right?
Right. Yeah.
But once that's set in stone, then stay the course, right? That you're pivoting your brand is in a unique position, and then leave it at that. If it's distinct, right? There's something differentiating you, but you're not just different to be different.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of like a teenager who just does the opposite of their parents for the sake of doing the opposite of mom and dad. Mom and dad believe this, or mom and dad do things this way, so I'm going to do the opposite just to stick it to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in other words, don't act like a teenager. Be an adult with your business and really recognize that being distinct is really key to your success for standing out, but also being that magnet and drawing that demand towards your business. And like we've talked about in this episode, is like the core of that is brand. Your business is going to really supply that demand with your service or product. But when it comes down to actually drawing in that desire and drawing that demand from the market, that's going to be your brand. And, you look at what your business provides versus what your brand provides. And that's really just kind of what we're trying to really keep hitting on the head with this, is like your business is going to provide that service or product that's very functional. It's economic. It makes sense. While on the irrational side of it, you have the emotional, really kind of like state of brand where you are connecting with your audience. You're relating to them. You are being, you're being subjective in a sense. You're allowing them to perceive certain things about you, but you can help them kind of guide that. Just like with Liquid Death, it's like they're signaling a certain theme and a certain attribute, and the brand is able to help kind of then create that persona and that perception that then draws people to it. And for exercise, as you're kind of thinking things over, when you do think of some of your favorite brands, think about beyond just what you're buying. It's like going back to like In-N-Out. Like when I go to In-N-Out, it's a different feeling of what I'm getting. I'm not just getting a burger and fries. It's much more, because the feeling that In-N-Out gives me is it's more than just burgers and fries. I can't describe it. It's like it's
Euphoria.
It's just like cloud nine. And so it's like how do you, in your business, how do you do that, right? If you're a winery or if you're a service business or whatever it could be, it's like looking at that and going, okay, this is the foundation for my business. This is how we stay alive. This is the bread and butter. But going beyond that, of going, what is that feeling? How do I help, whether it is a one-time transaction or a recurring thing? It's like, how do you give that person that feeling? And
again, do you spend all of your marketing energy and if it's ads, if it's whatever it is, however you are trying to market, if you are as a business just focused on marketing the items that you sell, or their prices or whatever it is, or, we have a coupon, or we have your mindset and your frame for how your brain is reaching its audience is through the business, and thereby you're focused on the transactions and you're focused on the actual selling versus the relational and the emotion connector that your brand needs to make with the audience.
Well, it's the long term.
So there needs to be, now, can you never have an ad saying, hey, if you're having a spring sale, but you can, again, but the idea is that you should be communicating constantly and reinforcing what that is. Again, Nike has never done that. They've continued to, and anytime you look at a Nike ad, you're never going to see anything about pushing the shoes or whatever it is. Or again, they've gone such beyond shoes. They start off, but
Yeah.
so we say shoes as in general, but you're never going to see an ad about any of the shoes that they sell.
Right.
And that's just plain and simple.
It's much more. They're selling
Right.
the lifestyle of it, and that's again even like marketing and doing ads and for sales or discounts. It's like even Rory Sutherland. He says like sales and all that is like that's the laziest form
Yeah.
of marketing. Anyone can do that.
Yeah.
It takes zero creativity and just go, oh, just drop the price.
Right.
Like it's.
I mean, even like
it's so.
Yeah, I mean, you look at like even for us, it's a more local brand company, but they've got national reach. 805 beer and made by Firestone, and you drive around our county, you see billboards and stuff, and it's just lifestyle shots. It's just they're selling. They're not getting into their new release of beer and how good their beer is compared to everybody else's or whatever. They're just it's like you're selling a lifestyle and that can be even something like if you're like, well, I can't put my brand into like a one word, that sums it up. Okay, that's fine. Then again, it leads back to the strong emotional tie that can come from aligning your brand in the same lifestyle that the consumer can associate with. Because then everything else that evolves in that lifestyle, if you are a brand and you want to and you lean into say the surf culture because you want to be that casual, laid back, just kind of happy-go-lucky brand, and that's the mindset of the general lifestyle, then if you're going to have shots of you with product, then having shots of people that look maybe like they surf or they're in that surf culture, they're wearing surf brands, associated cross-sector brands, that you're communicating that, and
Right.
again, because I think a lot of times we talk about echelon, but a lot of people walk away or from some of this going, I get the concept, guys, but how do I actually apply that? And sometimes they're being too literal. And so that's where it's just a matter of idea. Again, your brand is relational. Your business is transactional. So your marketing and the focus of your brand should be on that relationship that you have with the consumers.
Yeah. And like reading the room and understanding, hey, our consumers, they aspire to be this, just like the 805 beer. All their stuff is motocross. They even introduced some cool rodeo stuff and really just like guys doing amazing things in the pro athlete and extreme sports and all that. And they even, I have one of the guys on LinkedIn, and he's always showing the new videos they do of pro, male and female athletes who are doing crazy cool stuff, and they shoot it in the black and white, and it's so gritty and it has like texture to it and has nothing like there might be a couple of shots of them drinking the beer, but it has nothing. It's not like an advertisement.
Yeah.
And like it's so on point of the sense of, oh, someone who drinks, like when you drink this, you think of that. So then you think of, oh, I look a certain way or I feel this way when I am enjoying their beer versus I'm drinking a whatever.
Other commercials are going to show, the beer pouring into the glass, the amber color. Well, guess what? Most beer is amber color. So again, it's like, oh, look how good our beer looks. But it's like, again, you're focusing on yourself.
Yeah.
You're not focusing on them.
Right.
And that's the key, I think. If anything, if you could walk away with any like Renus echo from this podcast, is that your branding should be about them, not you.
And like all good words of wisdom, don't be selfish. Be empathetic. Put yourself in other people's shoes. And as a business, do the same thing. Put yourself in your consumer's shoes. Understand their pains. Understand their aspirations. And talk to them about it. Relate to them. Don't just talk about yourself. And that's going to put a wrap in this episode of Brandy. Thank you again for taking the time to sit down and sip with us as we venture through these different topics of brand and marketing and some business and psychology and all those great things. If you do have questions or anything, you can actually reach out to us directly. And that's just at motifbrands.com. And we're more than happy if there is a topic, we can totally discuss it on here and address it directly. But until next time, cheers.